One of the things we must realize is the developing South is caught in the middle of rising global tension.
The world has seen enough of the tragedy in Gaza, and it is time for countries to use their influence over Israel to put a stop to this real crime against humanity, South African Foreign Minister Naledi Pandor has said. South Africa was one of the few countries that cut ties with Israel in response to its attack on the Gaza Strip. South Africa has been outspoken about the plight of Palestinians and recalled its diplomats from Israel this month, as the death toll from Israel's bombardment of Gaza continues to climb. Palestinian authorities have said that more than 11,200 people in Gaza, more than a third of them children, have been killed since Israel began its attack on the Gaza Strip, in retaliation for an attack by Hamas that Israeli authorities say killed about 1,200 people, mostly civilians.
Pushback against the forces that seek to promote collective action, international solidarity, and global cooperation. We see the re-emergence of tendencies toward right-wing nationalism, unilateralism, and populism as an ongoing trend. Comrades, another assignment: engage the media. Why is it all right for a Palestinian journalist to be murdered, but it's not okay for a journalist from Canada to be murdered? What kind of value system is that? We've been silent about Shireen Abu Akleh. She was murdered before our eyes. The media today, since the period of the embeddedness of Iraq, totally without objectivity, except Al Jazeera. That's the only one. The rest, I'm sorry. But you need to be active proponents of an objective media that informs, that is balanced, and that tells the truth. Not a media that lies and tells you a quarter of the story. So we've got to address all these things. What we see in the globe today is widening inequality. And we know that the economy of the globe continues to deliver inequitable and unjust outcomes. Developed countries have selectively opted out of the observance of international law, while they continue to insist that rules must be implemented by developing countries, even at the cost of providing services to their people. Just last year, Ghana was facing an incredible financial meltdown. They approached the IMF. And this year, the IMF has suddenly reported that Ghana is going to see amazing growth after they received loans from the IMF. But nobody is examining, do the children of Ghana have classrooms? Do they have teachers in those classrooms? Are they able to go to hospital and get treatment? Are the people of Ghana getting housing? Because the first target of IMF loans is public services. So it's important that we look not just at what support is provided, but at the quid pro quos that governments have to make in order to have access to that funding. Developed countries have certainly not met their commitments to the developing world and are consistently shifting responsibility to us in the global south. You must address climate change. You must stop using coal. You must reduce emissions. You must do A, B, and C. We've developed, they had thousands of years to develop, and in a short space of time, we must arrest our development and respond to their demands. I'm not saying coal is what we should use. I'm not saying we shouldn't reduce emission. Don't misunderstand me. But I'm saying the kinds of demands being made on developing countries without appropriate resource responses are actually demands that are unconscionable. So what this has led to is it's become increasingly difficult to pursue sustainable development goals. We saw this year that the Secretary General of the United Nations has indicated that far from moving in a positive fashion, the world is actually going backwards. We now have more poverty, more inequity, more joblessness. So the fundamental crises of our time call for international responses, in our view. If we accept that the world is increasingly more fragmented, it provides an opportunity for those concerned with economic justice, yourselves, to work toward creating a genuinely progressive alternative. Progressive forces around the world need to push for multipolarity and a strengthened, fairer, and more inclusive multilateralism by exerting more influence on global debates. We should not be silent. We should be having loud views. We need to make our economies work for the common good, and we need to take all the measures necessary to protect our planet. We believe that what is needed is a different kind of multilateral architecture, which is more suited to today's challenges of the world. In our own view, Comrade Ronnie, despite its inadequacies, it is our belief that the United Nations must remain the primary locus for political, security, and development decision-making, as it remains the most representative global body, despite its shortcomings. We believe a complete overhaul of the UN system is needed so that the UN Security Council is democratized and reflects the current balance of forces in the global system. It's unacceptable, 8 decades nearly after its creation, 5 nations still wield disproportionate decision-making power in the Security Council, and those 5 number among the most problematic countries in the world, the causes of many of the problems I referred to today. So the overhaul of the UN system should include enforcement of decisions taken by what we hope will be a democratized UN Security Council. We also believe we should no longer accept a situation where countless UN resolutions are passed by the vast majority in the UN General Assembly, but are merely ignored. We've had repeated calls, as Comrade Khalid has said, from UN member states for Israel to withdraw from the occupied territories to the 1967 borders. These decisions have been ignored, and instead, we have witnessed the burgeoning expansion of illegal settlements on Palestinian land, growing oppression of the Palestinian people, gross violation of their human rights, and the Gaza Strip being turned into an open-air prison, regularly denied electricity, water, and fuel. The current denial is not new. It's been happening time and time and time again. For 16 years, Gaza has been under siege, with its people struggling to survive the ongoing land, air, and sea blockade imposed by Israel, with Palestinians denied exit and entry into the Strip. I was horrified when one of our former leaders, Comrade, I don't know if I should call him Comrade anymore, Comrade Teralekota, said that Israel is not an apartheid state. Well, the Palestinians are denied free exit and entry into their own land. They do not have free movement. We didn't have free movement under apartheid. Palestinian people use separate entrances when they go through the border. We had to use separate entrances under apartheid. Palestinian children do not have free access to education. It was the same for us. So I don't know what more Israel should do for Comrade Likota to recognize that it is an apartheid state. We've seen today increased Israeli aggression under the most far-right Israeli government we've ever seen. And we've seen the inaction by the Security Council, the very body whose mandate is to maintain international peace and security. Despite the fact that the root cause of this conflict is illegal occupation, we have heard a tirade of criticism of Palestinians from Western powers and unflinching support for the occupying power. Despite the fact that I've been called all kinds of names because I refused to call Russia an occupying power of Ukraine. I have always objected to double standards. These type of double standards are the result of a global system which is skewed in favor of the powerful, to the detriment of those fighting for their rights and self-determination. I repeat, it is imperative that social movements raise their voices in solidarity with the Palestinian people, particularly given the notably biased media coverage of the current violence.